Why do you carry the weight of a world that never asked you if you were tired? Look at your life, at the quiet moments before sleep catches you, and ask yourself honestly, before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. Who are you when you are not being dependable, when you are not solving someone else's crisis, or standing as an unyielding pillar of steel? You have worn the armor of the resilient survivor for so long that your skin has grown around the metal, confusing the weight of a heavy prison with the substance of your actual identity. But behind that relentless capability lies a profound, terrifying exhaustion, a silent panic that if you drop your hands for even a single second, everything you have meticulously built and everyone you love will collapse into nothingness. This perpetual need to be unshakable is not a virtue. It is a well-disguised psychic trauma that has severed you from your own vulnerability. You have become a prisoner to your own competence, bound by an unwritten contract to never require the very care you so freely distribute to others. You fear that without your strength, you are inherently unlovable, a useless entity who only deserves to occupy space when serving as a shield. We must dismantle this structure together, not through hollow, superficial words of comfort, but through a deliberate and painful confrontation with the unconscious forces that demand your slow self-immolation. Topic 1. The prison of the unyielding persona. Your strength is a beautifully crafted lie designed to keep you safe from the terrifying reality of your own helplessness. From the perspective of analytical psychology, what you call your resilience is often nothing more than an overdeveloped persona, a rigid psychological mask worn to navigate a world that you learned very early on would not catch you if you fell. You have identified so completely with this mask of the reliable savior, the worker who never complains, or the protector who never weeps, that you have forgotten the living human being breathing anxiously behind it. When you look in the mirror, you do not see yourself. You see the function you perform for other people. You have built a reputation on being the one who can endure any storm, swallow any insult, and absorb any betrayal without breaking. But the ego is deeply deceptive, convincing you that this endurance is a sign of spiritual superiority or personal maturity. In reality, it is a sophisticated defense mechanism designed to control your environment by rendering you invulnerable to the unpredictable emotional currents of those around you. This over-identification with the functional mask creates a devastating internal split. The more unyielding and flawless your outer presentation becomes, the more primitive, starved, and terrified your inner world grows. You are starving your true self to feed a social image that only loves you for what you can provide, effectively trapping yourself in a cycle where you must continually perform greater feats of endurance just to prove you still have value. Consider the physical reality of your daily existence, the chronic tension holding your shoulders rigid, the forced smile when you are emotionally hollow, the instinctive "I'm fine" that escapes your lips before you even process your pain. These are not choices. They are the autonomic reflexes of a psychic skeleton that has frozen in a defensive posture. You have trained the world to treat you as an inanimate object that does not break, and now you suffer secretly because they treat you exactly as you demanded. The hidden tragedy of this dynamic is that you have become the primary enforcer of your own prison sentence. You actively reject help, mock your own needs, and view any momentary lapse into exhaustion as an unpardonable moral failure. You have established a psychic tyranny where the ego whips the soul into submission, demanding perfect performance while denying the psychological organism its fundamental right to rest, to fail, and to simply be weak. This constant performance leaves you fundamentally isolated, even in a room full of people who claim to cherish you. They love the shelter your strength provides, but they do not know the shivering, frightened child inside who builds the walls. By hiding your vulnerability so perfectly, you ensure that you can never be genuinely seen, known or loved for who you are, only for the utility of your protective armor. We must understand that the persona is intended to be a flexible bridge between the inner self and outer society, not a concrete sarcophagus. When it becomes unyielding, it chokes the life out of the individual, replacing authentic psychic vitality with a hollow, robotic repetition of duty. You are running on the fumes of an ancient survival strategy that has outlived its usefulness, consuming your vital energy to maintain an illusion of absolute control. Every time you choose to be strong instead of honest, you reinforce the unconscious belief that your true unadorned self is defective and unacceptable. You are actively participating in your own erasure, throwing your genuine emotional reality into the abyss of the unconscious just to maintain the smooth operation of your external relationships. It is a profound act of self-betrayal disguised as a noble sacrifice. Look closely at the people who praise you most loudly for your strength and reliability. They are almost always the individuals who benefit the most from your lack of boundaries, the ones who rely on your compliance to avoid facing their own chaotic lives. Their compliments are not validations of your character. They are the rewards given to a well-behaved servant for keeping the system comfortable at your own expense. This realization is deliberately agonizing. Your cherished strength is actually a form of deep psychological cowardice. It is the fear of facing the profound discomfort of other people's disappointment, the fear of standing in the naked reality of your own limitations, and the fear of realizing that if you stop giving, many will simply walk away. You use your competence as a bribe to purchase a fragile, conditional form of safety. Until you have the courage to crack this mask, you will remain an absolute stranger to your own soul. You will continue to live a life that belongs to the expectations of the collective, moving mechanically from one obligation to the next until your body or your mind forces a violent collapse. The first cracking of this mask does not feel like liberation. It feels like a catastrophic failure of everything you have ever known. Topic 2. The exile of the vulnerable self into the shadow. Everything you have forbidden yourself from feeling has not vanished. It has merely migrated into the dark, damp corners of your shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow comprises those aspects of the psyche that the ego rejects as incompatible with its chosen identity. For the individual condemned to be strong, the shadow becomes an overcrowded graveyard filled with buried grief, unexpressed rage, legitimate dependency, and the desperate longing to be carried. You have cast your own vulnerability into exile, viewing it as a dangerous weakness that threatens your survival. When you see vulnerability in others, it likely triggers a subtle biting irritation within you, a judgmental contempt that whispers, "Why can't they just pull themselves together?" This visceral reaction is a textbook projection of your own repressed shadow material. You despise their weakness because you cannot afford to acknowledge the screaming, exhausted child hidden within your own unconscious. By refusing to look into this inner darkness, you grant your repressed vulnerability absolute power over your life. The shadow does not remain quietly buried. It mutates into somatic illnesses, sudden outbursts of uncharacteristic anxiety, chronic depression, and a pervasive existential boredom. Your psyche is engaging in sabotage because it would rather make you physically ill than allow you to continue the unnatural lie of your absolute self-sufficiency. Think of the moments when your control slips, the sudden, disproportionate rage over a trivial mistake, or the unexpected wave of tears that hits you while driving alone, triggered by nothing at all. These are not random glitches in your machinery. They are the violent, eruptive protests of your exiled self, demanding to be recognized. The shadow is knocking on the floorboards of your conscious mind, reminding you that what is suppressed will eventually find a way out. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. You have associated being vulnerable with being destroyed, likely because of an ancient script written in your childhood where showing weakness resulted in neglect, mockery, or abandonment. But by maintaining this absolute ban on your softer emotions, You have also inadvertently numbed your capacity for genuine joy, deep intimacy, and profound peace. You cannot selectively numb the psyche. When you bury your capacity to weep, you bury your capacity to truly live. The confrontation with this shadow requires a painful psychological descent. It demands that you sit quietly with the very feelings you have spent a lifetime running from. The deep, aching loneliness of being the strong one, the profound resentment you feel toward those who lean on you without asking, and the terrifying admission that you do not know how to save yourself. This is not passive self-pity. It is a brutal act of psychological honesty. When you begin to touch these repressed emotional states, your ego will experience an intense, frantic resistance. It will scream that you are being lazy, selfish, or ungrateful, trying to force you back into the familiar, exhausting rhythm of your hyper-competence. The ego prefers the predictable misery of overwork to the terrifying uncertainty of emotional transformation, because overwork keeps it feeling powerful and in control. You must learn to look at your buried weakness not as a defect to be cured, but as an essential part of your psychological wholeness. Your capacity to be tired, to be confused, and to require help is not a stain on your character. It is the very anchor that connects you to the human condition. Without it, you are merely an efficient machine, drifting further and further away from authentic psychic reality. The shadow holds the exact raw material needed for your healing. Within the very weakness you despise lies the forgotten capacity for self-compassion, the fluid creativity that can only emerge when control is surrendered, and the deep, instinctual wisdom that knows when it is time to rest. You cannot achieve individuation by perfecting your strength. You achieve it by integrating your discarded fragility. It is a deeply disorienting experience to realize that the aspects of yourself you have spent decades hiding are the very keys to your psychological survival. You have hunted down your own soft edges like an executioner, believing you are purifying yourself for the battle of life. In doing so, you have left yourself intellectually sharp but emotionally barren, wandering a desert of your own making. This realization is the painful breaking point of your old worldview. Your shadow is not your enemy, your overdeveloped ego is. The darkness you fear containing is not a monster. It is simply a child that has been left out in the cold for too long, dressed in rags, waiting for you to stop pretending that you don't hear it crying. The moment you open that door, the illusion of your perfect control dissolves forever. Topic 3. The compulsion to explain the infrequent breakdown. On those rare, catastrophic occasions when your strength finally fails and you experience an emotional collapse, a frantic panic seizes your entire being. You immediately feel an overwhelming compulsion to explain, justify, and rationalize your breakdown to anyone who witnessed it. You find yourself constructing elaborate arguments, citing extreme stress, physical illness, or a lack of sleep, desperately trying to prove that your vulnerability was a temporary anomaly rather than a fundamental human reality. This constant need to justify your moments of weakness reveals an intense state of self-neglect. As Jung observed, when you compulsively explain your internal states to the external world, you are revealing a profound lack of inner authority. You are essentially begging your environment for permission to exist in a non-perfect state, operating under the unconscious belief that your pain is only legitimate if others find your explanations logical and acceptable. This behavioral pattern is rooted in an ancient psychological wound, usually inflicted in an early environment marked by emotional invalidation. You learned as a child that your raw, unedited emotions were dangerous, inconvenient, or outright rejected by your caretakers. To survive, you developed the habit of editing your internal reality, translating your natural emotions into rationalized arguments that the adults around you would find acceptable. Now, as an adult, you continue this exhausting performance, acting as a defense attorney for your own suffering. When you are sad, you don't just weep. You present a case for why your sadness is mathematically justified by your circumstances. This is a sophisticated betrayal of the self. By forcing your feelings to pass through the filter of rational justification, you are participating in the exact same emotional abuse that originally wounded you. Every time you explain away a breakdown, you are implicitly telling your unconscious mind, You're only allowed to hurt if I can prove it's efficient to do so. This creates a profound state of inner fragmentation, where your authentic emotional self is systematically silenced by a tyrannical, hyper-rational ego that is deeply terrified of social judgment. You have outsourced your self-worth to the understanding of the crowd. The truth is harsh and uncomfortable. Your explanations are not attempts at communication. They are desperate maneuvers to avoid abandonment and rejection. You are terrified that if people see you truly broken, without an excuse or a plan for recovery, they will realize you are no longer useful to them and will promptly cast you aside. You use your intellect to maintain a fragile illusion of safety. This constant effort to control how others perceive your pain consumes an immense amount of your limited psychic energy. Instead of using that energy to actually process your grief or rest your exhausted nervous system, you waste it on public relations, ensuring that your breakdown looks dignified, logical, and temporary to the outside world. You are editing your soul for an audience that isn't even paying attention. Jung understood that true psychological freedom requires you to step out of this eternal theater. Healing begins when you choose the path of absolute silence in the face of pressure for explanations. It is the radical decision to look at someone who expects a justification for your tears or your boundaries and offer them absolutely nothing but the raw, unedited fact of your current state. When you refuse to explain yourself, you reclaim your internal authority. You shift the center of gravity of your entire psyche away from the validation of others and back to the sovereign core of the self. You are declaring to your own unconscious that your experiences, your tiredness, and your pain are inherently valid, requiring no external seal of approval to exist. This shift will inevitably cause a profound crisis in your interpersonal relationships. People who have grown accustomed to your compliance and your constant justifications will find your new silence incredibly disturbing, even arrogant. They will accuse you of changing, of becoming cold or unfeeling, because your lack of explanation deprives them of their accustomed handle for manipulating your behavior. You must build the psychological capacity to endure the deep discomfort of being completely misunderstood by those around you. If you rush to clear up their confusion or soothe their anxiety, you will immediately slip back into the old, toxic pattern of self-betrayal. You must allow their wrong assumptions about you to hang in the air, using that tension as a crucible to forge your new internal strength. The moment you completely stop justifying your limitations is the exact moment you begin to step out of your invisible prison. You finally stop playing the character of the unshakable hero and begin the real, messy, and authentic process of becoming a whole human being. Your silence becomes your shield, and your unedited vulnerability becomes the very foundation of your true psychological independence. Topic 4. The Parentification Project and the Debt of Existing. No one chooses to become an unyielding pillar of iron without a compelling reason. This trauma is almost always born from the premature death of childhood innocence. You were likely a parentified child, an individual who was forced by environmental chaos, parental weakness, or emotional neglect to step into the role of the psychological adult long before your psyche was mature enough to handle the burden. You became the emotional caretaker of your parents, the mediator of family wars, or the secret keeper of the household. In this environment, you learned a deeply perverted law of existence, that your survival depended entirely on your performance and your ability to minimize your own footprint. You realized that there was no room for your childish needs, your fears, or your tears, because the adults around you were already drowning in their own unmanaged complexes. You learned to suppress your own development to keep the family ship from sinking. This early conditioning implants a malignant psychic virus, the unconscious belief that you owe a continuous debt to the world simply for existing. You operate under the constant anxious assumption that you are an inherent burden, and that the only way to pay for the space you occupy is to be useful, strong, and entirely self-sufficient. Every act of overwork and every boundary you fail to set is a desperate payment toward this phantom debt. Because you were never allowed to safely experience the natural dependency of childhood, your psychological development suffered a severe trauma. The natural instinct to rest, to lean on an authority figure, and to trust that you will be protected was violently severed. You grew up believing that the universe is an inherently hostile, unreliable place where you can only rely on what your own two hands can secure. This creates an adult who is profoundly incapable of receiving love, gifts, or assistance. When someone tries to care for you, it triggers an immediate visceral anxiety rather than a feeling of comfort. Your unconscious mind screams that this care is a trap, a liability, or a debt that you will have to pay back with interest, causing you to instinctively push people away or immediately overcompensate to restore the familiar dynamic of your absolute independence. You have become a psychological orphan by choice, refusing to let anyone close enough to see the profound poverty of your inner world. You take a twisted pride in your isolation, telling yourself that you prefer to walk alone because others are too weak, too unreliable, or too messy to depend upon. This cynicism is not wisdom. It is the frozen scar tissue of a child who was let down too many times to ever risk trusting again. To heal this, you must engage in what Jungian psychology recognizes as a profound confrontation with the personal past, a descent into the memory systems where the neglected child of your history still resides. You must look back at your younger self and recognize the absolute cruelty of what was demanded of you. You must grieve for the childhood you never had, allowing yourself to feel the intense rage and sorrow of being forced to grow up too soon. The ego will resist this grief with everything it possesses, because acknowledging the unfairness of your past threatens the carefully constructed narrative that your strength is a noble achievement. It forces you to realize that your identity was formed under duress, that you were shaped by trauma rather than conscious choice, and that the lifestyle you are so proud of is actually a long-running survival reflex. You must consciously give yourself permission to resign from the position of the universal caretaker. The family members, friends, and partners you have been carrying are not fragile children. They are adults whose psychological growth you are actively stunting by refusing to let them face the consequences of their own choices. Your overprotection is not love. It is an ego-driven manipulation designed to keep you feeling indispensable. The dissolution of this pattern requires you to consciously default on your psychological debts. You must allow yourself to be a burden. You must choose to be inconvenient, difficult, and demanding, intentionally testing the boundaries of your relationships to see who remains when you are no longer paying for their presence with your life energy. It is a terrifying, scorched earth process. When you finally stop paying this false debt, you will experience a profound, systemic shock. You will discover that the universe does not collapse when you stop holding it up, and that your value as a human being is entirely independent of your utility to others. You are allowed to exist simply because you are here, a living expression of nature, requiring no justification, no armor, and no endless displays of strength to earn your place. Topic 5. Archetypal captivity, the ritual of self-sacrifice. You are not merely trapped by your personal history. You are caught in the powerful, magnetic current of a deep collective archetype, the myth of the martyr savior. The human psyche is wired to find profound, intoxicating meaning in the ritual of self-sacrifice. You have unconsciously cast yourself as the protagonist in a tragic cosmic drama where your suffering is holy, your exhaustion is a badge of honor, and your eventual destruction is the ultimate proof of your love. This archetypal captivity provides your ego with a deeply addictive form of psychological inflation. It feels incredibly good to view yourself as the only one who can endure the weight, the only one who never breaks, the one who carries the cross for the entire family or company. This secret arrogance convinces you that your suffering is noble, blinding you to the fact that you are using this grand myth to escape the mundane reality of your own psychological emptiness. The problem with archetypes is that when they are lived out unconsciously, they consume the individual entirely. The myth of the martyr demands a literal sacrifice. It requires that you destroy your body, your peace, and your authentic self to fulfill the script. You are participating in a slow, socially sanctioned form of suicide, running yourself into a state of total burnout because you believe that dying for others is the only way to achieve immortality in their memories. Look at how you handle your physical health, the way you ignore your body's clear distress signals, push through agonizing fatigue, and treat your physical form as a beast of burden to be whipped into compliance. This is not discipline, it is an archetypal ritual of mutilation. You are sacrificing your biological reality on the altar of your psychological complex, using your physical endurance to maintain your inflated ego identity. This archetypal possession completely distorts your moral compass. You begin to view healthy boundaries as sins, self-care as disgusting selfishness, and any desire for personal happiness as a betrayal of your sacred duty to suffer. You become an executioner of your own joy, systematically destroying any opportunity for ease or pleasure because it threatens the purity of your tragic identity. The healing process requires an act of radical psychological differentiation. You must separate your individual consciousness from the devouring power of the archetype. You must look at the myth of the savior and state clearly, "I'm not the redeemer of this family, I am not the savior of this company. I am merely a fragile, limited human being with a single life that I am currently throwing away." This is a profound deflation of the ego. This disillusionment is intensely painful because it strips away the grand romance of your suffering. It forces you to realize that your burnout is not a holy martyrdom. It is simply a sad, completely unnecessary waste of your vital energy. You are not saving anyone. You are merely serving as an emotional buffer that allows others to continue their own self-destruction without interruption. When you step out of the savior archetype, you must face the profound existential dread of your own ordinariness. You must learn to live a life that is not driven by grand, dramatic crises or intense acts of rescue. You must learn to tolerate the quiet, simple rhythms of a normal human existence where you are responsible only for your own psychological integration and your own immediate choices. This requires you to allow the myths of your past to die a violent death. You must watch the illusion of your grand necessity burn to ashes, recognizing that the world will continue to turn, your friends will find other ways to cope, and your family will survive without your constant intervention. You are not the center of the universe, you are merely a participant in it. This archetypal detachment frees your energy for the true work of life, the process of individuation. Instead of pouring your psychic lifeblood into the collective container of other people's expectations, you begin to use that energy to build your own inner house. You transition from a mythic figure of suffering into a genuine, grounded human being who has nothing left to prove to anyone. The ultimate liberation from this archetype comes when you realize that the most profound gift you can give to the world is not your broken, sacrificed body, but your psychological wholeness. A person who has integrated their shadow, set firm boundaries, and reclaimed their joy is infinitely more transformative than 100 burned-out martyrs weeping in the dark. Topic 6. The retaliation of the repressed body. The body is the literal canvas upon which the unconscious writes the truths that the ego refuses to acknowledge. When you enforce a psychological ban on weakness and demand that you must always be strong, your physical organism becomes the ultimate battleground for this conflict. Your body will eventually stage a violent, unyielding mutiny against the tyranny of your mind, translating your unexpressed grief and buried exhaustion into the undeniable language of physical illness. You cannot lie to your nervous system. Every time you swallow your anger, suppress your tears, or force your exhausted limbs to work another hour, your brain registers a profound threat. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline, keeping you in a state of perpetual low-grade survival mode. Over decades, this chronic biochemical poisoning erodes your organs, disrupts your immune system, and manifests as autoimmune disorders, chronic pain, migraines, and systemic fatigue. These physical symptoms are not random mechanical failures. They are the symbolic expressions of your repressed shadow material. Your chronic back pain is the literal weight of the family responsibilities you refuse to drop. Your tight jaw is the unexpressed rage you lock behind a polite smile. Your digestive issues are the toxic situations you continue to stomach out of a false sense of duty. Your body is screaming the no that your mouth refuses to speak. Look at how you react when your body finally collapses into sickness. The intense anger, the deep shame, the feeling that your physical self has somehow betrayed you. You view your illness as an annoying obstacle to be overcome as quickly as possible with medication. so you can return to the frantic rhythm of your hyper-competence. You treat your body like a broken machine to be fixed, rather than a living soul demanding a complete transformation of your life. This somatic alienation is a severe form of self-contempt. You only love your body when it is efficient, obedient, and silent. The moment it shows weakness, you despise it. But your body is actually your most loyal psychological ally, intervening with physical pain to save you from the utter destruction that your ego's ambition would otherwise guarantee. It forces the halt that you lack the consciousness to choose. Healing the trauma of strength requires you to enter into a deeply humbled, dialogical relationship with your physical form. You must stop trying to conquer your symptoms and start listening to them as profound communications from the deep self. You must sit quietly with your pain and ask, what is this symptom forcing me to stop doing? What boundary is this illness trying to draw for me that I have failed to draw for myself? This requires an absolute surrender of your intellectual arrogance. You must allow your body to dictate the terms of your life, accepting that you can no longer work the hours you used to, that you can no longer tolerate the toxic environments you once survived, and that your capacity for endurance has reached its absolute psychological and biological limit. You must bow to your own fragility. This somatic surrender is deeply terrifying to the overdeveloped ego because it represents a total loss of control. It means accepting that your willpower is not infinite, that you are bound by the stubborn laws of biology, and that you cannot outthink or outproduce the needs of your animal nature. It forces you to step off the pedestal of your omnipotence and crawl back into the dirt of your human reality. As you begin to honor your body's boundaries, you will experience an intense wave of guilt. You will feel like an imposter, a lazy parasite, or a failure as you lie on the couch while the world's work remains undone around you. You must hold this guilt like a fire, letting it burn through your old conditioning without allowing it to drive you back into the destructive loop of frantic activity. True physical recovery is inseparable from psychological integration. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. As you allow yourself to feel the repressed grief and set the boundaries your body has been begging for, you will notice a slow, miraculous dissolution of your chronic physical tension. The somatic armor will begin to melt, releasing an enormous amount of trapped life energy that can finally be used for your true creative development. Your body is the temple of the living self, not a factory machine to be run into the ground for public approval. The moment you choose to honor its fatigue over the world's demands is the moment you begin to heal your ancient trauma. You finally realize that your physical vulnerability is not a design flaw. It is the very compass that guides you back to an authentic, integrated existence. Topic 7. Severing compulsive disposability and forging limits. The most terrifying realization on this path of recovery is the discovery that your legendary helpfulness is actually a form of passive aggression, a subtle manipulation designed to control other people's behavior by making yourself entirely indispensable to them. You have made yourself universally available, a psychic 24-hour convenience store, because you are deeply terrified of the raw, untamed nature of human relationships when they are not bound by debt and utility. You must choose to become intentionally, consciously unavailable. This is not an act of cold cruelty or narcissistic isolation. It is a vital act of psychological self-preservation. It means establishing rigid, non-negotiable boundaries around your time, your emotional energy, and your private spaces, deliberately refusing to participate in the everyday crises of the people around you who have learned to use your strength as an escape from their own developmental duties. When you begin to draw these boundaries, you must be prepared for the immediate defensive reactions of your social circle. The people who have spent years feeding on your availability will not applaud your psychological growth. They will experience your new boundaries as a direct assault on their comfort. They will attempt to manipulate you with guilt, calling you selfish, uncaring, or unstable, desperately trying to trigger your old complex to force you back into submission. You must learn to stand entirely still within the storm of their disapproval, refusing to offer a single word of explanation or justification for your new stance. The moment you begin to explain why you are setting a boundary, you have already surrendered your internal authority. You are treating your self-preservation as a trial where they sit as the judge, begging them to agree that your exhaustion is valid enough to warrant a break. A boundary is not a negotiation. It is a sovereign declaration of a structural fact within your psyche. It is simply stating, I am no longer available for this dynamic. I will not carry this burden for you. My decision is final. If they walk away from your life because you refuse to be their emotional garbage disposal, you must let them walk away with absolute gratitude, recognizing that their presence was entirely conditional on your self-obliteration. This process of pruning your relationships will leave you standing in a very cold, very quiet landscape of inner solitude. You will look around and realize that much of what you thought was a rich social life was actually just an audience of consumers who loved your utility but cared nothing for your soul. This loneliness is not a failure. It is the sacred desert of the individuation process, the clearing of the ground. In this space of unavailability, you will finally begin to reclaim your scattered psychic energy. You will discover how much of your vital life force was being drained away by superficial conversations, ungrateful dependencies, and frantic efforts to maintain a false harmony in environments that are fundamentally toxic to your growth. You are calling your spirit back to its own house. This newly conserved energy will initially feel uncomfortable, manifest as an anxious restlessness that demands you find something to fix, someone to save, or some work to complete. You must resist this compulsion with every ounce of your consciousness, forcing yourself to sit empty in the quiet space you have created, allowing your psychic battery to recharge from its own internal spring. You must understand that your unavailability is the highest form of respect you can offer to others. By refusing to save them, you are finally treating them as competent adults capable of navigating their own darkness and suffering their own consequences. You are withdrawing your projections of weakness from them, forcing them to look to their own internal resources for survival. This creates the foundation for authentic human connection. When you are no longer driven by the frantic need to be useful, you can finally love people for who they are, not for the validation they provide to your savior complex. Your relationships cease to be business transactions based on mutual exploitation and become genuine encounters between two whole, independent realities. It takes immense psychological courage to be the one who stops carrying the weight, to be the one who says no more while the crowd demands conformity, but it is the only path that leads away from eventual psychological death. Your unavailability is the exact boundary that separates your unique sovereign existence from the devouring maw of the collective consciousness. Topic 8. The desert of isolation and the rebirth of the integrated self. When you finally lay down your heavy armor and step off the pedestal of your eternal strength, you do not immediately find peace. You enter a profound, terrifying wilderness of inner isolation. This is the liminal space that Jung recognized as the dark night of the soul, the necessary intermediate stage of individuation where your old functional identity has completely died, but the new, integrated self has not yet been born. You are stripped of your usefulness, standing naked in the truth of your own humanity. In this desert, you will face an intense existential boredom and a deep, aching emptiness. Without the constant noise of other people's crises and the frantic distractions of your duty, you are forced to confront the absolute silence of your own inner world. You will discover that you do not know who you are, what you enjoy, or what your life is for when it is not being spent in service to the external collective. This emptiness is not a void to be filled with new tasks or fresh responsibilities. It is a sacred space of clearing. It is the necessary pause where your psychic structures are being radically rearranged, moving away from an external, ego-driven orientation toward a profound alignment with the self, the authentic archetype of psychological wholeness. You must allow this emptiness to hollow you out completely. It is precisely in this stillness, far beneath the demands of your old persona, that the first true whispers of your integrated self will begin to emerge. You will find a soft, long-forgotten capacity for spontaneous play, a deep connection to nature that requires no achievement, and an intuitive inner voice that knows exactly what you require to thrive, completely independent of anyone else's opinion. You are transitioning from an object that reacts to the world into a conscious subject who creates from within. You no longer move through life driven by the fear of rejection or the toxic anxiety of your complexes. You move with a quiet, rooted gravity, acting from a deep center of internal alignment that cannot be shaken by the winds of external disapproval or praise. The rebirth of the integrated self manifests as a profound, unshakable peace, a state of psychological density where you are perfectly content to be ordinary, to be limited, and to be beautifully incomplete. You no longer require the grand romance of martyrdom or the intoxicating highs of hypercompetence to validate your existence. You recognize that your breath alone is a sacred event. You will return to the world of human relationships, but you will return as a dangerous entity, a person who cannot be manipulated with guilt, who cannot be bribed with superficial praise, and who knows exactly how to say no with absolute, loving finality. You will become a sanctuary for others, not because you carry their weight, but because your presence reminds them of their own capacity to stand alone. This integration allows you to hold both your immense strength and your profound fragility in a state of perfect psychological tension. You recognize that you can be capable of great creation, while simultaneously requiring hours of silent withdrawal. You can be an unyielding protector of boundaries, while allowing your heart to break open in genuine intimacy. You are no longer a flat caricature of resilience. You are a living paradox. The trauma of having to be strong is finally healed when you realize that your true power lies not in your ability to endure suffering without breaking, but in your courage to surrender completely to the natural flow of your own life. You stop fighting the universe and begin to trust it, letting go of the frantic illusion of your absolute control to float in the deep current of authentic being. Look back one last time at the heavy armor you left behind in the dirt. It served you well during the long-forgotten wars of your childhood, keeping you alive when the environment was hostile and unreliable. Thank it for its historical service, but turn your back on it forever, recognizing that you no longer need an iron shell to survive the beautiful, terrifying landscape of your own life. You are finally awake, standing firmly in the sovereign center of your own soul, rooted, whole, and completely free from the obligation to save a world that was never yours to carry. The journey through the darkness is complete, and what remains is the simple, majestic reality of your own unadorned existence. The path we have walked together through this reflection is not an easy one, for it demands nothing less than the systematic execution of the heroic character you spent a lifetime perfecting. It forces you to stand in the uncomfortable, bleeding reality of your own limitations, recognizing that your exhaustion is not a temporary inconvenience, but a profound cry for justice from a soul that has been ruthlessly exploited by your own ego. If you have the true courage to remain in this state of deep discomfort without running back to the familiar sanctuary of your frantic overwork, a profound transformation will take place within the very fabric of your mind. You will find that when you stop holding up the sky, the stars do not fall. They simply illuminate the ground upon which you can finally stand as a whole, authentic, and beautifully fragile human being. If this confrontation with your inner world resonated with the silent exhaustion you have carried for decades, you have already begun to pierce through the grand illusion that has kept you imprisoned. Do not retreat into the safety of your old armor. Stay naked in this new clarity. I invite you to subscribe to this channel, to join our quiet revolution of conscious minds. And to demonstrate your commitment to this transformation, leave a specific comment below detailing the exact responsibility or dynamic you are choosing to drop today, using the phrase, "I choose to drop the armor." Let us see who among you possesses the rare, terrifying strength required to finally embrace their own vulnerability. Continue your descent into the unconscious by watching the next video immediately. Your individuation demands nothing less than your absolute presence. We shall meet again in the deeper layers of the soul,